being stuffed down our throat, the more that we will take it as commonplace that he is infallible. And I think that there's such danger to that, you know? Anyways, he later said that the shooter was mentally disturbed, which it is coming out that he is. He had his own issues in terms of just familial background, and I believe the way he was raised. I think he grew up in foster care and all kind of other things. But listen, he also killed a number of people, and I don't know why the conversation is not being skewed more towards gun control. We're not trying to take away anybody's amendment rights. I think just an AR-15 for a 19-year-old who clearly has mental issues, he shouldn't have access to it. But, what are you gonna do? What are we gonna do, y'all? What are we gonna do? Anyways, so did you guys see the paintings this week? The Obama post-presidency images. We got to see those this week, and artists Kehinde Wiley and Amy Sherald, two Black contemporary artists. If you're not familiar with their work, Kehinde's work has even been featured on some television shows. If you watch Empire, it's definitely been featured on Empire. Kehinde Wiley is very much known for, and I'm a huge fan, kind of the mixing of prints and kind of these really amazing vivacious colors. And it really is about, I think that if you are someone who is interested in art, even when it comes to things that you may not understand, I think that it's interesting to view like his perspective on Blackness versus Amy Sherald's perspective. A lot of her pieces often will depict stronger accentuation on facial features, and she often uses kind of gray skin tone, and that is in an emphasis to add more to the features. Well, at any rate, those two artists were the ones chosen to capture the beauty of our former president and first lady, and I think it was amazing. I know there's been kind of some mixed reviews. I feel like I've heard from people who maybe are probably not familiar with Kehinde or Amy's work, that they felt like it was really busy. And I think that I would challenge you, because you don't have to be like an artsy fartsy, you know what I mean? I would challenge you to look at it from the perspective of, look at the features on the person, look at the skin tone, admire that. Like, don't get caught up in like, whoa, the print is distracting. Look beyond the print. Like, look at the way the person has been captured. And that says a lot, even in terms of how not only the artist sees the world, but also how they see that person. What's being emphasized? Is it, body, like chest? It says a lot for how that person views their the specimen in which they're capturing. But anywho's, so, all right, I guess you could pull up this week, right? So, I feel like boundaries, has become a little bit of a repetitive theme for me lately. Not necessarily I feel like I'm crossing any boundaries currently, but I feel like the theme that I'm realizing is that I do get people who cross certain boundaries with me. And I think that that's because I am not really an effective communicator when it comes to setting boundaries. Pull up, if you will. Let's discuss. So, okay. Now, let's just relate on this for a minute. If you were raised to be a people person, not even a people person, a people pleaser, so to speak, even if it were for the perspective of just for your parents, right? So I guess the best way for me to describe it is like, if you're, and there's nothing, I don't want to like, kind of like play anybody's parenting, because that's definitely not what it's about. But I think that it's very interesting that a lot of parents raise their children to be people pleasers. Never really acknowledging the idea of what it means to have personal esteem and the personal sense of ambition. Not necessarily I'm doing well because I don't want to disappoint my parents, although that is often a part of the growing up factor. But if that is your main thing, I think that that's always something that's kind of not weird to me, but I question it in some way of, how are you able to raise kind of free thinkers in a world where you're challenging them to please you? It's more about them doing what's right, not to embarrass you, not to, so you can talk about them to to your friends or whatever the case is, and less about teaching your kids true independence and the value of, putting themselves first and seeing success for themselves and beyond the scope of pleasing anyone else, really just taking value in themselves first. But anyways, the wild part of all of that is it also creates this atmosphere where no, and the ability to say no, and the ability to like really have no be a complete statement also becomes an issue. But what are you guys' dating boundaries, or what are you guys' relationship boundaries? And I ask this because, like, remember when, like, let's go down memory lane. Remember when our Aunt Lauryn Hill was like, baby girl, respect is just the minimal. Niggas fucked up and you still defending him. I'm always quoting her because she's a wise oracle. But do you demand respect? And what does that look like? Like, what does the demanding of respect look like for you? Because, like, I feel like where many people might have the game fucked up is like, do you want the respect? Do you want empathy? Or do you want sympathy from this person? You know what I mean? Like, which well are you drawing from? Anyways, so what I was saying basically before we had to take a little brownie break. But I guess my biggest thing is understanding that there is a vast difference between the respect, the empathy, and the sympathy, and making sure that we're not using those words interchangeably. So, all right. The reason why I came across this was, I think one of the things that anyone could do to me that would really girt my loins, don't fuck with my time. And I'm really particular about that one thing, only because I can never get it back. So I always find it very irritating when someone feels like they have just cause to take my time without, without being respectful of the fact that, I can't get it back. So to me, it brought up issues of respect, and in my mind, a lack thereof that possibly this person may have for me. So then I thought about, okay, well, what do you think respect is? Because you're going to have a conversation with this person. So what do you think respect is? And then how the response that comes from respect, are you looking more for an empathy or a sympathy response, right? So base level, us being on the same page, we all know respect is the ability to value another person's experience, right? Now, then we know that empathy is the ability to feel for another person's experience, while sympathy is feeling for someone with a sense of detachment. So I feel like, and this is just me keeping it 100, I feel like sometimes when you get into and this is going to be a sermon for the girls who are dating for sure, but I feel like when you get into hot and heavy with someone too soon, and take that for whatever you want it to mean, whether it mean like physically y'all just went there too fast, too soon, or even emotionally y'all went there too fast, too soon, right? I think that there ends up being a detachment of the sympathy part sometimes. So there's a detachment there, and it makes it easier for disrespect to exist in that kind of weird space. Because I feel like respect it has to start from giving one your complete attention, and it has to involve a level of communication and connection, right? And I feel like sometimes if that connection is rushed, so if you have sex too soon with somebody, you can have the false perception that there is a connection when in fact there really isn't. You're just jonesed up on the physical, you know what I mean? And it's making you think that this is something more than what it is. And I think sometimes that's how, some of us may have it twisted out here. You know what I mean? Like, you think that because there was a physical connection, probably a little bit too soon, you mistake that for an actual real level of complete attention and communication and connection. You know what I mean? When in fact, it kind of takes a little bit more of some actual time, and then taking it to the level where the involvement of being connected gets to the point where you start to see yourself in this person's experiences, even the painful ones. Does that make sense? Like, the more time you spend with somebody, the more when they talk to you about their experiences, you can get to the point where you're like, you see them as real people. You even see yourself in their situation. You can even be empathetic towards this situation. You can move from a place of sympathy but detachment, because I don't really know you, to a place of actual empathy, which is really the real response that you want. You don't want sympathy, because that's just like whatever, you know what I mean? So my natural inclination is the power move, like I want to demand the respect. And when I don't get it, I shut down. And I get to this place where I might start spiraling and blaming and like kind of getting out of control. You know what the spiral is like. You start to, blame yourself. You start to kind of blame the other person. You're kind of looking for a reason for why this thing didn't work, or, you start to flail, you know what I mean? Because you're basically either looking to detach or you're looking to blame, you know what I mean? But you're looking for understanding. So what I started to realize is that I needed a level of emotional mastery. Right. You're like, emotional mastery. That sounds diabolical. It somewhat is, but honestly, I think that in our quest to be mindful, I think that it is important that things like this and terms like this and understandings and conversations like this, where we get to understand kind of what it is that we're asking people for. Because I think that a lot of times we are very general. And I said this to a friend last night. I think that the more specific you can be in terms of kind of these generalizations of the kind of person you want, also becomes a thing for the kind of person that you need to be. So understanding respect as not just a power move where you just say, I demand